There's also an issue that's important to men too. Like, men need to stop acting as though reproductive health care, as though, you know, women need reproductive health care for no reason, as though we exist in silos. Like, hello, like, takes two to tango. And so we need to make sure that we look at this as this is about reproductive health care for all people. And I think that it's super important that we talk about that. But additionally, today and this week, rather, Ayanna Pressley led on a new bill, which I am proudly co-sponsoring and co-leading with, on introducing insurance-covered over-the-counter birth control. Hello, very important. This is extremely important because how many of y'all have not been able to access birth control because you can't afford to go to the doctor, just for that doctor to talk to you for 5 minutes. So you pay the copay to go to the doctor, for that doctor to talk to you for 5 minutes, for him to write a prescription for you, for birth control. When I first heard about this amendment, I think I had maybe the same reservation that a lot of people who have reached out to me about this have, which was basically saying, is it safe? You know, that was always my first thing. Is it safe to have birth control over the counter? And I'm a lawmaker. I'm not a doctor. And so I don't want to play doctor by making things that should be behind the counter, over the counter, right? But then we looked into it, and this policy is actually endorsed, and Ayanna's bill and this bill on over-the-counter birth control is actually endorsed and supported by the American Association of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. So medical professionals believe that it should be over-the-counter. It is over-the-counter in many countries around the world. And it doesn't mean that you should not consult with your doctor about things. You can always consult with your doctor about getting access to birth control. And you can always, you know, a lot of, depending on what medical services you use, a lot of people use telemedicine, or there are platforms where you can securely text or have phone conversations or video conversations with your healthcare provider. You can discuss your options with them. But what this does is that it eliminates that bureaucracy, and it lets you access birth control over the counter and not have it be exceedingly expensive because your insurance can still cover it. So this is a bill. I think it's so important. It will make birth control so much easier. And in my opinion, even if you are socially conservative when it comes to the issue of abortion, the best way, and the states that have lowered abortion rates the most are the ones who provide very liberal and open access to birth control and to sexual education. So the more we allow people to access birth control, the more that birth control is affordable and easily accessible, the more that children understand things like consent and understand sexual education, understand their reproductive organs, how they work, etc., the lower people's rates are in terms of actually having to seek an abortion. And then, of course, first of all, that's how you lower those rates. And then, secondly, if a person is in that situation, that is a medical decision. It is not a political decision. It is not for Mitch McConnell to tell you what you can do with your uterus. It is up to you and your doctor. And so that easy access to birth control is so incredibly important to reproductive health, to maternal health, to all sorts of votes. And this is not a women's issue. This is a men's issue. And this is it. It's across the gender spectrum. All people should have control, and all people should be able to have reproductive health care the way that they have access to health care for all sorts of other things. So that is that. Now let me get back to sorting all these pieces. See, I usually purchase a decent amount, but there's a lot of single-use plastic in this. I hate that. I'm trying, guys. I'm not perfect, but I'm at least being conscious of it. And it does look like they're recyclable, so I'm going to make an effort there. Okay. So all the little tools and such are in here. Here we go. The last time I tried doing this, I had no tools, and I would just like to say thank you to all the people, little tools to our office to help out. It was very appreciated and super sweet. So that was really nice. Thank you all. I'm looking at your questions, guys. Sorry, guys, I'm just taking a look at your questions. All right, here's a good one. Is this coming up? Okay, here's another really great thing to talk about. Stagnant wages despite booming economy. This is such an important thing for us to talk about because how often have we heard from presidential administrations of both parties, I'm not here to be completely partisan about this, where people are saying the economy's going great and we should all be thankful. The economy's going great, the economy has recovered, 2008 was a long time ago, everything is fine, and you're just kind of looking up and you're like, am I crazy? This is crazy. We're seeing it with the Trump administration. Frankly, we saw it with the Obama administration as well, where you have people saying the economy's great, the economy's great. But at the same time, you feel like you're really struggling to get by. Everyone you know is struggling to get by. Even people that you don't know are struggling to get by, are an enormous amount of credit card debt or student loan debt or both or none or whatever. And that is because the way that a lot of people try to measure the health of the economy is in overall GDP, which is gross domestic product, just the overall value and worth of the economy. So overall GDP could be booming, but the actual lived experience of people is not. And that is happening. I would argue that is happening now. I would argue that that happened as well during the Obama administration. People at times called it, like, I think it happens all over the place. And I think the reason for that is because in our economy and the way that it is structured today, we have unprecedented levels of income inequality, where the rich are getting richer and life is only getting harder for middle class, working class, and poor people. And so each year our economy is booming and growing, but all of that growth is only going to a small handful of people. And so as a consequence, as the cost of living increases, as rent goes up, as healthcare goes up, as education goes up, our wages, working class people's wages, are staying the same, and middle class people's wages are staying, for the most part, the same. But people will say average income is going up, even if it's a little bit, because it's billionaires or multi-super millionaires, like hundreds of millions. I'm not even talking about 1 or 2 million. I'm talking about like 300, 400 million is going up. But the average person's experience is actually only getting harder and harder. And even if you get something of a raise or a cost of living increase, compared to the actual increases in the cost of living, your wage is either staying the same or really, in real terms, your wage is going down. And that is why wages will remain stagnant despite people constantly saying that the economy is booming. I think that it's a really misleading thing to say. I don't really care what party you're from. I think that if you are saying the economy is booming, but you actually look at the qualitative characteristics of working and middle class people's wages, if the majority of people's lives are not getting economically better, I do not think that the economy is booming, no matter what the GDP numbers say. We need to really look at people's quality of life and the ability of the many to afford the very basic things that I would say are rights in our state and in our evolution as a society and as a people. And so for me, what that means is that I don't really care what the NASDAQ or the Dow Jones say. I don't care. And when people talk about, oh my gosh, like socialism this, socialism that, let's talk about capitalism. Okay, what is capitalism? I think that capitalism and the idea of capitalism gets confused by a lot of people. I think capitalism, a lot of people think about capitalism and they're like, oh, capitalism, that means businesses, right? That means a free market, right? That means competing for having different products compete on the market, right? That's what capitalism is, right? That's not what capitalism is. You can have free market economies with mixed economies, which mixed economies exist. You can have free market economies with democratic socialist businesses. What on earth is a democratic socialist business? And a perfect example of that is worker cooperatives. So worker cooperatives are, if you ever go to Vermont, or if you go to upstate New York, there'll be grocery stores that are employee-owned, or they are cooperative, which means that people own the shares and workers own the shares in the company. So a more democratically, quote-unquote, socialist business would have workers on the board of the corporation instead of billionaires on the board of a corporation. So it's really about democracy in the economy. I don't believe in government. It does not mean government owns everything. Socialism does not mean government owns everything. I disagree with that notion as well, because I think that it is undemocratic. I think that it is very easily corrupted, and I don't think that that's a good thing. But I do think that having more democracy in our economy, aka worker power, worker accountability, is a very positive thing. We do see healthy models of that, thank you very much, in the world. We see healthy models of that. I do think that there are certain sectors where in overt for-profit incentive is not healthy, and that a public option, at minimum, a public option is a help. One example of that, public schools. we had to pay, imagine if we had to pay tuition for our kids to go to school from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. It would be untenable, unfeasible. Businesses that are always trying to profiteer. Imagine if Walmart ran your public school. That does not sound fun at all. And so some people, it's to private schools, they're, you can do that if that's what you want to do. If you want to pay $30,000 to send your kid to kindergarten, which some people do in New York City, that's your business. But we as a society have decided that it is vital enough that we provide a public option for elementary education in the United States. And that's what we do. We have a public option for public school. We have, guess what? We've decided that we're going to have a military. And that military is paid through, it is known as the common defense. We may not some people may have political views where you don't agree with that, etc. But it is the system that we have established. Good. Roads and bridges. Now, it's not to say that all of this is socialism, but it is to say that at a very minimum, that many of these systems can be used as public options. And guess what? The military, when you look at the military is an original federal. You don't have to have feet if you can pass like very exams and very basic levels of qualification, then you can enter the military and you will have a guaranteed job. You will have with certain base income, health care coverage, etc. And so these are not foreign ideals. We have a socialized fire department and all these sorts of things. So when you kind of want to revert back to this notion of capitalism is really an ideology of capital, that the most important thing is to accrue capital at any and all human, environmental, and social costs. So it doesn't matter if your employees are peeing in bottles because they can't get a break and they don't have time to go. If they back up 100 boxes in a day or in a shift, then that's what they need to do. And all of that is to maximize profit. If you need to pay your workers less than a living wage so they can't afford to feed themselves and they have to go on SNAP or WIC even though they're working 40 hours a week, that's capitalism. It is an ideology to maximize profit and capital at any human and environmental or social cost. And what we're saying is there are some things in life and some things in society that should not be for sale. Your right to health care should not be sent to the highest bidder. Your ability to stay alive and access insulin because you are diabetic should not go to the highest bidder. Your access and ability to get insulin should be a human right. Your ability to have clean water, like the people in Flint, your ability to have clean water and to trust that your children are drinking unpoisoned water should be a human right. And the only reason that those people, those beautiful people and those innocent children and families were poisoned in Flint was due to corruption and due to a desire to accrue capital. And so that, I think, is really the issue that we're addressing now, is a generational shift. I see this and I acknowledge it, and I'm fine with that. I think that we are experiencing profound generational shifts in attitudes across a wide variety of political issues. And that's why I don't think our issues are necessarily left